Welcome to the TK Show with the Athletic Bay Area's Editor-in-Chief, Tim Kawakami.
Hey everybody, Tim Kawakami here, TK Show, recording for the last time maybe. Ben, you're getting a little nostalgic. Last time at TK's Kawakami Studios. There are reasons for this. We'll get into them later, but it's been a good room for us. We've recorded a few good shows, maybe some less than good shows, but I'll take the good shows. And very, very pleased to have on as my guest for the last guest on this iteration of the TK Show. We are not going away, but this iteration is changing. This platform is changing. But for this time, great to have on, and also really great to say, the Athletics national media columnist, Richard Deitsch, obviously longtime Sports Illustrated media columnist, friend of mine, great guy, multimedia star. I'm sure you're conquering many other levels even as we speak, but you're a radio guy now in Toronto. You're everywhere, but just great to have on Richard Deitsch. Richard, how you doing?
Tim, that was really a ridiculous introduction for me.
That's what I do. I'm good at it.
But I appreciate it all the same. It's good to be with you.
Oh, well, Richard, I'll just ask you straight off. I mean, I think the last time we talked to you, you were about to start this radio gig. You've done it kind of semi-regularly now for, what, about 6 months?
Yep.
Yeah. What's that been like? I mean, you're someone who has opinions, you're someone who can talk, but just jumping into it, has it been any harder than you might have thought, or has it been just a fun thing to do?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been so much fun. For one thing, I walked into the most established sports show in the entire country. Primetime Sports is on 590, Sportsnet 590 in Toronto. Sportsnet is, sort of their equivalent of ESPN or TSN's. They're, sort of in Canada, maybe there's two ESPN. So it's sort of walking onto like a national ESPN radio-ish show that's been long established. The host of that show is a guy named Bob McCown. He's the most famous sports talk host in the country. And the other co-host with me, who works the weeks I don't work, is a guy named Stephen Brunt, who I don't know if you've come across him, but one of Canada's most accomplished sports writers. So I'm not even sort of trying to downplay this. Like, I literally could not have walked into an easier situation for someone to walk into. It's the reason I took the job. It's just because everything was established for me before I walked in. And it's been great. I'm working a little over 30 weeks a year, at least in terms of what the calendar year will be. And, I'd say over the last 2 years, I've really dived deep into Toronto sports. So the content's been I wouldn't call it easy, but it sort of at least flows, I feel like, pretty good for me. The Maple Leafs are the one team that I really had to come up to speed on, at least from a couple of years ago. But, I've watched every Raptors game now for the last at least a year and a half, and I've watched just about every Maple Leafs game for the same amount of time. And same with the Blue Jays. And, I think, to be on, and it's not that we only talk about Toronto sports. The reason the show is really good is it's a national show that talks about sports issues, including U.S. issues. But it's the people there could not have been nicer, and it's just been fun. Again, I'm not carrying the show. I'm not a solo host, and you know this just from your own work at The Athletic and elsewhere. When you're working with people on air that you like, it doesn't really feel like work. Yep. It just feels like a conversation. So it's been a lot of fun.
So you feel partially Canadian here, or are you the American view? Are you the American? Do you find yourself kind of blurring that sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm Canadian because I think that's a disrespect to those who are actually born on in these fine shores. But yeah, I mean, the people here have welcomed me about as kindly as one can get. And ironically enough, Tim, welcoming me at a time where perhaps America is not the most popular country everywhere in the world. So I definitely feel. Yeah, I mean, I think I feel part Canadian for sure. But I'd have to be here a little bit longer to sort of, I feel like, really have a better sense of what this place is about. I'm very Toronto-centric so far because I really haven't had a chance to travel the country and see other places, Calgary, Edmonton, or Halifax, or wherever. And I do hope to do that. But it really is a great country. I mean, Canada has a reputation of being friendly and polite and fair and all that. But it's legit. It's not a perfect country. They have the same issues that exist in the States as well, but it really is it's a place that I feel like strives to be better, and that's a pretty good place to be.
You have a unique view, and this, I mean, an American has been at Sports Illustrated and does a show in Toronto and has come to The Athletic, all in some order there. I have a fairly good sense, I think, of what the West Coast feels about The Athletic, or just the way the journalism industry maybe in America feels about what's happening here, good and bad. Since The Athletic became so big, specifically in Toronto, so fast, but probably before it became big anywhere, what is the general view? And you know, we're both employees from The Athletic, so you know, take that into consideration for the listeners. But what is your sense of what The Athletic means to Toronto and means to Canada?
Well, I think, you know, and again, keep in mind both of us work here, so you know,
yes.
we have financial interest in the success of this place. But I think the reason that The Athletic has been successful in Toronto is multifold. One, and this is a legit reason, the newspaper industry in Canada over the last couple of years has really taken some hits.
Yep.
They've lost a lot of people, particularly sports sections have been gutted, and I think there was a need for the kind of pieces that The Athletic does. I mean, real detailed analysis or real detailed features. It's not to say, I subscribe to the Toronto Star. I think they're a really good paper, excellent sports section, but there's just not enough. There's not enough content. There's not enough newspapers in the country. So that's sort of one where I think certainly in the Toronto market there was a need for it. And two, and Tim, I'd be curious of your take on this. The reason why I think the Toronto Athletic site is phenomenal is James Myrtle, the head of that site, has really made it a point to do things, I think, very differently than most people have been used to reading. And he is very, very analytical driven. Yep. So just the kind of stuff that I've seen on that site, I mean, they'll go 3,000 words sort of diagnosing a sort of statistical analysis of like Kawhi Leonard's shot or the shots he favors on the floor. Or they'll go very, very deep in terms of why a certain defenseman on the Leafs has a certain metrics number or sort of plays a certain way based on the sabermetrics of it, and they determine whether and how that relates to the rest of the league. They're just very, and I'm not particularly numerically oriented, but that site is very, very numerically oriented, and they just do stuff, especially with graphics and charts, that I have not seen anywhere in any newspaper, to be very blunt, across the country. They also have very, very good writers, John Lott, Caitlin McGrath. I mean, I shouldn't just name a couple because really the whole site is very, very talented in terms of both writing and reporting. And I think they just are really smart. That's like the best word I could think of, is they cover sports in a very smart way. And the Canadian audience, particularly in Toronto, is pretty educated. And I feel like they recognized or have recognized that this is sort of really high-end sports writing that's worth the money that The Athletic is charging. So that's why I think they've been successful. I think from the direction of James Myrtle, I think they've really tried to be very smart about the kind of pieces that they've done. He's also made really, really good hires. So it doesn't surprise me in the least. That's the one thing, The Athletic's going to get written about, and I think that's fair. And I read the Slate piece on it, and I'm sure you did too. Mm-hmm. And there were some truths in there that, The Athletic does have content every day that is like the content that you see in newspapers. Where I thought it was not true, or a little bit of confirmation bias by the author, is if you read that Toronto site every day, I mean, just objectively, you're not seeing that in any other newspaper in the country or any other site in the country. In the same way, I don't know how many places sort of are like the Ringer and sort of combined pop culture sensibilities with sports. I would say that's sort of a unique place. What Myrtle and that staff is doing with sort of analytics, you're not seeing that even in the vaunted New York Times or Washington Post. And so that site deserves all the credit it gets, I think, internally at The Athletic, because they're really doing good stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, Myrtle, for me, changed the company. If I can say it, he's my brother from another border, because there's nobody in this company I feel a greater kinship to, or I respect more than from James. But that's enough of this on Myrtle. I don't even want Myrtle to hear this, by the way. But I will say, and that Slade story, is they thought they were grilling me, I guess, about whether we've had stories that newspapers don't have. I've never said that we needed to do different things. I just said we need to do great things. And whether it's a great story that was in a newspaper, a great story that's in our place, if we do enough great stories on our site, that's all people will want to read. So that's yeah, you mentioned it, so I had to spit that out because they thought they were grilling me. They thought they were exposing me for some reason on this one, and I don't think they did. Richard, let's talk about the media. This is what you're known for. You've been writing about the NFL's relationship with ESPN. It's certainly been different. It's changed a few times. We know that the new head of ESPN has made great kind of signals that they're going to have a better relationship. Do you see this kind of as a sea change, that they're maybe not going to do the same kind of investigations, or are they going to keep the investigations aside and just be more lovey-dovey on the broadcast side?
You talking about ESPN?
Yeah, ESPN and the NFL, that relationship.
Yeah, that's a great, that's sort of the million-dollar question that we're all trying to figure out, at least those of us who write about this stuff. It is very clear that ESPN has decided to do a reset of its relationship with the league. I don't think there's any question about that. And that's probably smart business, and their executives have a much better relationship now under Jimmy Pitaro than they did with John Skipper and the NFL. I think part of that is John Skipper really was not a big NFL fan, and that these things are factors when the chief executive of your company, what sport he or she likes, it does make a factor in terms of the business relationship. And so, they have said all the right things, ESPN publicly. We're still going to do journalism. We're still going to cover the league, in a vigilant, hard way. I don't know how you can't be skeptical, Tim, to be very honest with you. They've let go of a lot of NFL people. They've let go, sort of at least on the writing side, Jay McManus types, Ashley Fox, and Werder. They have, I think, made it clear that they want a much more positive relationship with the league. So they're going to cover, still the transaction stuff. Adam Schefter's still going to write about Reuben Foster and who claims them, and they're still going to have sports shows that talk about this. But I wonder if we'll ever see a really hardcore investigation again about CTE or things that really, really impact the NFL's bottom line. I mean, ultimately, in the end, the NFL cares about, that you cover the NFL closer than me. NFL cares about its money, its public reputation so that it can bring money in, and it cares about the money, obviously, it's getting from media rights holders. And so if ESPN covers sort of the criminality stuff about players, NFL's not really going to get that mad about that. I mean, that exists, and other people are going to cover it. Where I think the NFL would really sort of be like, you're killing us, is these sort of is the stuff that the Fainaru brothers did when it came to concussions. When it really comes to the foundation or the fundamental bottom line of the viability of the league long term, that's when the NFL gets a little bit worried, and I would not honestly expect to see anything of great depth from ESPN in the near term. Maybe Outside the Lines does something kind of pro forma, but you're not going to see it. And really, where all this stuff, Tim, I imagine you agree with me because you covered media for a while too. It's not necessarily like what gets censored. That's not really where the censorship comes. It's kind of like setting a how do I sort of phrase this? It's like setting sort of a pattern throughout the company where the people on air know the line that they can't cross.
Yep.
So it almost becomes self-censorship. So it's not like Jason Witten's going to get a call tonight and say, hey, don't go very deep into the sham investigation by the NFL. Don't go very deep into blasting Dan Snyder. It's just that it's sort of fundamentally known what line you can't cross if you're going to be an on-air person at ESPN. And I feel like that's where all this is heading. So they're not going to be devoid of investigations. They're just not going to do stuff that I think under the previous regime, and specifically with Skipper, that they might have.
We're going to take a quick break to talk about our friends over at Hims. 66% of men lose their hair by age 35. Some of you Warriors fans probably have a joke about this regarding a certain Los Angeles Laker, but it's not funny when it happens to you. The thing is, when you start to notice hair loss, it's too late. And why do guys turn to weird solutions, or even worse, do nothing, when they can turn to medicine and science? forhims.com, a one-stop shop for hair loss, skin care, and sexual wellness for men. Thanks to science, baldness can be optional. Hims connects you with real doctors and medical-grade solutions to treat hair loss. No waiting room, no awkward doctor visits, and save hours by going to forhims.com. It's insanely easy. Answer a few quick questions, a doctor reviews them, and can prescribe you products which are shipped directly to your door. Order now, and TK's listeners get a trial month of Hims for just $5 today right now while supplies last. See website for full details. This would cost hundreds of dollars if you went to the doctor or a pharmacy. So, go to forhims.com/TK. That's forhims.com/TK. forhims.com/TK. We're going to take another quick break to talk about our friends over at Robinhood. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. They strive to make financial services work for everybody, not just the wealthy. The Robinhood app is insanely easy to use, which is fantastic for a novice like myself. Other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, but Robinhood doesn't charge commission fees. Trade stocks and keep all of your profits. There's easy to understand charts and market data. Place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. The Robinhood web platform also lets you view stock collections and analyst ratings of buy, hold, sell for every stock. Learn how to invest as you build your portfolio. Discover new stocks and track favorite companies with personalized news feeds. Custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving our listeners a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help build your portfolio. Sign up at tkshow.robinhood.com. That's tkshow.robinhood.com. And now, back to the TK Show.
Well, we talked about a little bit Monday Night Football. You've written a lot about it. Lots of conversation about that new team, Tessitore, Witten, and McFarland. I can take or leave it. I understand there's strong emotions about it, and I know. And one thing again, I know Tessitore is a really popular guy in the industry. Is that going to hold up? Is this team going to hold up in the next year, or are they that committed to it, or are they just saying that and then maybe they got to take a look at it after this season?
Well, I think the problem for ESPN and this team is that they just had a change a significant change in the broadcast team.
Yeah, one of their analysts left to go somewhere. I'm trying to remember where he went.
Yeah, you've heard of him. Yeah, I believe he went into the National Football League to coach a certain West Coast team.
Oh, that's right.
How is that going to?
It's going well for his bank account. I know that.
Yeah. Bring back Amy Trask. The Raiders hope. So, they just went through their change in broadcast with Tirico McDonough-Gruden and all that. And so I don't think they want to go anywhere near changing the booth yet again in a short amount of time. What I think they were not prepared for, by the way, I'm not sure they care, but what they were not prepared for is sort of the backlash on this particular team. I didn't think they would. I know for a fact that they never thought that there would be so many viewers who did not like the combination of Tessitore, Witten, and McFarland, from McFarland being on the field, which personally to me is a little overblown, but obviously viewers did not like that, particularly viewers at the game, to the Witten criticism, which I think is very, very fair. And then Tessitore, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I've always liked him as a college football analyst, so I'm sort of going to stick with that opinion. But, there's a lot of people, and it's not an unfair thing to say, is that he's sort of overhyping too many calls in a given game, or sort of at least some viewers are finding it hard to listen to him not dialing back a little bit. I think they're going to give the team at least another year. I can't see them not doing that. I don't think they want the hassle or the headache of trying to find another team. And I think they're kind of at least publicly committed to Witten in the near term, given that they've said from the beginning that we believe in him, we're going to give him this year to sort of grow. Where I think they made a big mistake, just personally, is as a general rule, you should not hire – Monday Night Football should not be a training ground for an analyst. That's one of the 4 biggest or most important or best jobs in football. And if you're going to bring in a guy who has no broadcasting experience, you have to hit it out of the park the way CBS did. And so that's where I think they just miscalculated. They had a lot of great choices. Louis Riddick, Kurt Warner, you name it. There would have been many choices who would have sort of been an excellent A-chair analyst. But at the moment, Witten has not been that, and I would not expect him to be that this year. And I think if you're ESPN, you really just have to hope that after 18 games, 18 reps this regular season, next year he comes back and all the mechanics are more familiar and chemistry between these three guys is more familiar, and it's just a better listen.
Let's get to the NBA a little bit. You've mentioned the lower ratings nationally. I guess it's also involved locally. And you've said it's because LeBron James is on the West Coast. There aren't as many East Coast starts. I initially, and wasn't responding to you, was responding to somebody else, saying I just don't understand how the Lakers getting the most famous player in the world could lessen ratings. But I understand the East Coast start times and all that. I also understand that they haven't had many East Coast stars. They just recently had a few. But don't you think at some point it's going to be balanced out? Or do you really think that LeBron going to West Coast and all those late-night games is a permanent change to that will lower the NBA's ratings across the season?
I think it's a permanent change for this year for sure. I think viewership will be affected for the year, and I think the viewership of the regular season will be down by the end of the year. I don't know how much, but I do think it's a factor. But there's a couple other factors that you have to add to LeBron moving west. The two of the biggest markets on the East Coast, or sort of Midwest/East Coast, Chicago and New York, are terrible.
Yep.
And nationally, they can't get any kind of big number for the Knicks or the Bulls, and they lose out on two gigantic markets because if those teams were any good, they would get those home markets, and the numbers would be really, really strong. The Celtics have gotten off to a really slow start for a team that was expected to be like a Warriors-like juggernaut team, and that's hurt the viewership as well. I think there'll be interest in the Celtics because they're a historic team and they have good players, but not like the fervor that I think Turner and ESPN expected. I think people expected the Celtics to be like 18-5 or something like that, people tuning in. East Coast games get a little bit of a break with Jimmy Butler heading to Philly, so it'll be interesting to watch the interest in Philly nationally. But, LeBron James was and is just a major television draw, the biggest television draw in the league since Jordan. And you can't underestimate him moving to the West on those early games, the first part of the doubleheader. Conversely, I think, Tim, if the Warriors were a little bit better, I think the numbers would be up. I'm not – everybody – the dumbest thing ever is sort of like, knocking dynasties and stuff. But I do think there is something to – if you want to convince an East Coast fan to sort of stay up really, really late to catch the Warriors playing somebody, the Warriors do need to be exciting and good and have a decent record. And that does, I think, convince maybe the fan in Boston or Philly to stay up. So the Warriors getting off to or the Warriors maybe rolling some wins over the next couple of months, I think would help the viewership numbers as well. But yeah, honestly, I do expect the league is healthy. It's a great league. It's fun. But I think the numbers are going to be down. And I think it's a big part, LeBron James, big part A, and B, some of the big cities on the East Coast, the NBA is getting nothing from nationally, and I think that hurts.
This is why there is some momentum to see Durant with the New York Knicks, right? I mean, that's part of it, is change the entire dynamic. A major franchise in New York dying for a star, and that's would fit Kevin. I mean, I don't know that's going to happen, but that's it. That's the equation, right?
I don't think Kevin Durant is going to go to the Knicks without sort of obviously being there like you are every day. It just seems like whatever's going on with Durant and the Warriors, I think his team would have to be smart enough to see that it would. He's 30 years old. I mean, the Knicks. If you want to be, I mean, the ultimate like sort of best optimistic viewpoint, 2-3 years away at best, maybe from contending, and that would be if Porzingis is really, really healthy. So while I think the league would love Durant to be there, I can't see it. That said, I think the league would love to see Durant in the East.
Yep.
I'll tell you another thing, too, and obviously it's close to home with me. The Raptors are an incredible team. They're so much fun to watch. They have, arguably the best or second-best player in the East in Kawhi Leonard, but networks can't put them on the way they would put, obviously, Golden State on and LeBron on back in the day in Cleveland because the networks do not get the Toronto market.
Yep.
So all the Raptors games when they're nationally are always going to be lower because you're taking away a home market, basically, for Turner. And that hurts right now, too. Weirdly enough, the game itself, the excitement of the game could be awesome. But if you're Turner and ESPN, you can't overload on the Raptors because, there are financial decisions to make. Like I saw the other night, the Raptors, Golden State game. It drew, I think it drew like maybe 1.1 million, 1.2 million against the Warriors. That should be, given the quality of those two teams, that should be a 2-3 million viewership game. But the reason it isn't is because you're not getting the market, because the Toronto market doesn't count in the ratings.
Yep. Hey, what'd you think of Tiger Phil? Do you think Turner's going to keep going with it? Obviously, they had some distribution problems, major distribution problems, but can this continue, and does it have to be Tiger every single time?
I personally think if they want to do golf, it has to be Tiger. Yeah. I do think they're going to do it again. I mean, let's put it this: it doesn't have to be Tiger. I think if they want to get any kind of, if they want to have an attempt at making money, or if they want to attempt at getting traction, it has to be Tiger. At the moment, I cannot see Rory McIlroy, Dustin Johnson, versus Jordan Spieth, and fill in your next
Brooks
player.
Koepka. That'll do
yeah,
it.
I mean, I don't know how you make that sort of. I don't know how you convince the audience to pay for that. Now, I do think they could use Tiger in part of, maybe sort of create something interesting that involves Tiger. So let's just say Tiger and the best player in the LPGA versus Dustin Johnson and the second best player, or Tiger and some old timer, versus Phil and some old tiger, or Tiger and Michael Jordan versus Phil and Charles Barkley. Like that kind of stuff could work. I mean, I don't think you would get the number. I don't think you'll ever get the number that you got for this one, but there's an audience somewhere for pay-per-view golf if you sort of come up with something creative. What Turner's going to try to do, I think, is just to take this concept and then push it to other sports where it really could be interesting depending on what they get. Now, again, Tim, this is never going to happen, okay? But just sort of hear me out. If you got Michael Jordan to play in, let's say, a 2-on-2 with LeBron versus Kobe and KD, again, I'm making this up. This is not going to happen. Do you think people would pay $10 for that? I guarantee they will.
Yes.
So that's like where theoretically this could totally work. I just think it's up for Turner and Bleacher Report to figure out, okay, we have this platform. We're going to figure out how to make all this work. What is like a good sporting event where the curiosity seekers would actually pay, enough money to do it? So that you'd have to just get creative. But there's probably some stuff out there that would be creative enough where people would pay money.
Hey, what numbers did they get? I mean, I don't know if it really matters because they had a refund so much and they let so many people free, but what numbers are they saying they got for that?
Yeah, John Oran reported this, or at least that's where I saw it. Maybe somebody else did first, but 750,000 unique visitors.
Wow.
So that's a pretty good number. Better than I expected. Oran, when I talked about this on my podcast, thought that the price point was good. I thought it was too high. I would have gone to $9.99, and I think they would have gotten a lot more people. But I'm not in the business of that, and I'm sure they ran the numbers through their marketing people. But to me, it was a little high for what totally was an exhibition, and didn't count. But I guess maybe the counter is okay. People are willing to pay $54, $60 for an MMA fight or a boxing fight, and you're getting less time in terms of that event, which might be 2 or 3 hours, where the Phil Tiger one lasted like 6 or 7.
Yep. And I would say, just from a purely customer and a golf fan, if I'm paying $9.99, I'm going, what the hell am I really going to get for this? Okay, $19.99, they might try to get something out of this. There might be a show. I don't know. It's some weird concoction where you charge more, and I think there's going to be more. I didn't happen to buy it. I didn't even try to get it for free. But I would just say you start getting lower, and I'm going to go, well, maybe this thing is going to be a real discount thing, and it's not going to be anything I want to see. Just a weird customer way to look at this. Richard, I've taken plenty of your time. I just definitely got to end up with the usual question. I've asked you your favorite restaurant before, so I'm not going to do that. I'll go. You're a guy with a lot of interest, so I'll say, Richard, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, Tim, is going to be something that I bet you most people are. You have not gotten this answer on all the people you've asked. Let's see if you have. Okay, you ready?
Sure.
My favorite movie is Witness.
Okay,
which is with Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis. It's showing my age here.
Yeah, 90s, late in the 80s maybe.
Yeah, mid-80s.
Okay.
I saw this when I was pretty young. But I was always sort of struck by Harrison Ford as a detective who's got to basically protect this Amish kid and has to go become an Amish farmer to hide out from some bad cops who are trying to kill this kid. Danny Glover, by the way, playing a heavy in that film as the bad cop.
Nice.
But I love that film. It was directed by Peter Weir, who went on to direct some fantastic films after that. But that film, after I saw that film, I always wanted to go to Amish country. I just thought it was like the most fascinating thing. So again, I would not say. By the way, Peter Weir directed Truman Show and Dead Poets Society after that.
And RoboCop, I think, too, didn't he?
Maybe Paul Verhoeven. I'm not sure.
Okay, nice, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So basically, again, it's not the best movie of all time by any means, but when people ask me that, I would say that would be my favorite film. Tim, I should ask you: what is your favorite film, Tim? What would be your answer?
It's really cliche, but To Kill a Mockingbird knocked me over when I saw it when I was young. Obviously, not when it came out, but I saw it in a class, and I still can't get over Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird. I just there's something about that one that touches on a lot of different things for me. The book was incredible, but that movie I can't get around. And I just say, if you want to go more contemporary, although not that contemporary, I would say Diner. That's one where I'll tell you. Here's the story. I was in high school, I think, maybe not even high school, and we were going to go see some big movie. It was one of the Star Wars movies or something with my friends, and we couldn't get a ticket. So my friend comes back, goes, okay, I couldn't get a ticket, so we're going to go see this movie Diner. And we didn't know what it was, had never heard of it. It was this vast disappointment that we're not going to see the big Star Wars movie or whatever it was. And we sit down, and I couldn't believe how funny that movie was from the first second and the intricacies. And I didn't know all these guys were going to turn into incredible actors, but yeah, there they were playing out in this incredibly original, just the way it hit me as a purely stunning moment. I'll never forget. And every time I look at it again on cable, I get that moment again. It just was this unique point in time of not expecting anything, and there it was. So not that contemporary.
Have you read the Scott Price piece on Diner?
No, I haven't. I didn't even know he wrote one.
He wrote a piece either for Vanity Fair or GQ or one of those places, but he did a big long-form piece on sort of why Diner is has stood the test of time. So you should check that out.
Wow. And I'll just say another one that I almost saw in a similar way was Purple Rain. I did not know it. I didn't really know Prince that well, and I walked into the first song, Let's Go Crazy, and it was like, this is something I've never, ever seen before. Those two movies. Again, look, we're talking about movies we saw when we were young, Richard. Isn't that telling? It's like those are the ones that impact us. Those are the ones that we feel.
I know. I will say, though, Tim, just in terms of pure junk food, because it happened to be on last night as we're talking this, I watched Die Hard again.
Yeah.
Man, that film I could literally watch that film 5,000 times. It still stands up today.
That's one that does it with me for some reason. I don't know why. True Lies does. For me, True Lies, I could watch it a million times. And Die Hard, I can't. I couldn't.
Will you watch Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah.
Whatever it's on?
Well, at the right moments. Yeah. If I will always go, okay, am I going to get to the end? Am I going to get to the end? I'm going to watch him smash that pipe and crawl through there and come out. Then I will watch it to the end every single time. If it's a little bit earlier than that, I probably won't. But yeah, Shawshank.
It is a Tim Robbins. Morgan Freeman walking on the beach to see Tim Robbins.
That also too. All those things. But yeah, and Godfather's the other one. If it happens to be on.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I would have said sort of in terms of another sort of old school film, The Sting is arguably one of the sort of like almost a perfect film for me.
Yeah,
the one thing when you have kids, you don't see as many new movies as you used to. So I'm a little out of my element, but
we haven't named anything.
Especially living in New York, I literally was seeing multiple movies a week. It was great.
Yeah, I'll just say one. Again, we're going on this, but one incredible thing. I interned in New York when I was very, very young, and went to a lot of Mets games. And I sat in the Mets press box next to William Goldman once, and I didn't really know who he was. I mean, this was like he was just becoming huge, but he was really friendly, and we're chatting away or talking to William Goldman. And then I went back and this is the guy who wrote All the President's Men, and Princess Bride, whatever. And the Princess Bride, I think, came after that one. But there's a lot of incredible things about living in New York. That one was when I had a desk next to Maureen Dowd. We'll tell you what paper I interned at. And I was scared as hell of her. This is when her not long time in the New York office, because she went to Washington very quickly after that. And I sat in the press box next to William Goldman, and I had a game-long chat with William Goldman. Two pretty cool things about New York right there.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, the great thing about New York is if you live there long enough, like it's a frequent occurrence to sort of run into very famous people. I can remember sort of walking down the street and sort of saying hi to Juliana Margulies to Bruno Kirby to like Cynthia Nixon. I mean, just like New York is just one of those places where like sort of it's kind of probably a really good place for celebrities. They just sort of walk sometimes amongst you, which is actually pretty fun.
Yes, yes. All right, Richard, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, nothing that's significant to you, but this is the last show of this iteration of the TK show, so I know that really means.
What is happening, Tim? Why is this the last show?
Well, we're switching to a new platform that involves the company we both work at. So I am.
But Tim, people are gonna because as you know, Tim, we now live in a Twitter instantaneous world. People are gonna think I killed the TK show.
No. That's why I want to warm them up to this, that the show's not going anywhere. We're just changing platforms. It hasn't all been put together yet, but we decided to kind of run it out through this year, and then we're going to be on a new platform. We still have to kind of figure out the exact details, or the details are going to be figured out above my head. But I wanted to make sure people knew that this I might go away for a little while, but I'm going to leave them with a good one. I'm going to leave it with you and me talking about 1980s films.
Just let the athletic bosses know I'm doing a good job. I know you're tired with them.
Oh, yeah. The thumbs up for me, but I don't think you need it. But it's great to have you on. Great to have the conversation, and thanks a lot, Richard.
Thank you, Tim. Always great to be with you.
That's TK Show for today. Thanks.